You can't heal what you refuse to see. And you can't fix what you continue to tolerate. Sometimes, the greatest danger isn't the people who disrespect you loudly, it's the ones who do it quietly. Consistently, until one day you stop noticing. Disrespect doesn't always show up shouting in your face. Sometimes, it wears polite words and practiced smiles. It hides in the moments when someone cuts you off while you're speaking. As if your voice doesn't matter, it lingers in the silence after you've poured out your heart. And they don't even acknowledge your truth, it sneaks in when your time, your kindness, your very presence is treated like an afterthought. And here's the danger: if you're not careful, you'll start convincing yourself that this is normal. You'll begin to think maybe you're just being too sensitive, maybe this is just how life works. But I'm here to tell you, no. That's not how it's supposed to be. God did not create you to walk this earth as someone's emotional punching bag. He didn't breathe life into you so you could spend your days questioning your worth in the eyes of people who can't even see their own. You have to recognize the signs, not in anger, not in pride, but in truth, because when someone repeatedly dismisses your opinions, mocks your dreams, belittles your efforts, or pretends your feelings don't matter, hear me, that is not love, that is not friendship, that is not respect. It doesn't matter how long you've known them, it doesn't matter how close you were, disrespect is still disrespect. The enemy loves to move in spaces where confusion clouds your vision. He wants you to doubt yourself, he wants you to feel unsteady, unwanted, unsure. That's why you must sharpen your spiritual eyes. Ask God to open them, not just to who people pretend to be, but to who they truly are when you are no longer useful to them. Sometimes we cling to people because we remember who they used to be, but God is showing you who they are now, and if who they are now no longer honors you, no longer uplifts you, no longer even treats you with basic kindness, then you need to wake up. Recognizing disrespect is not about searching for someone's flaws. It's about protecting the peace God gave you. It's about honoring the temple He created in you. And don't confuse humility with humiliation. God calls us to walk humbly, yes, but never to live humiliated. Jesus washed the feet of those He loved, but He never begged anyone to love Him. He spoke with grace, but He walked away when hearts were hardened. He never chased after people who were committed to dishonoring Him. And if the Son of God didn't chase approval, why should you? Some of you have been bending over backward for people who wouldn't even cross the street for you. You've been exhausting yourself for people who wouldn't lift a finger in return, and deep down, you feel it, that ache in your chest, that quiet unrest in your spirit. It's not just emotion, that's the Holy Spirit nudging you, whispering, this is not where you're meant to stay. You don't belong in spaces where your presence is treated like a burden. You don't belong in conversations where your words are discarded. You don't belong in relationships where you're constantly shrinking just to keep the peace. You were created with divine worth, not because of what you do, not because you perform perfectly, but because the one who made you said, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. That's not just a motivational quote, that's a heavenly truth. So the next time someone makes you feel small, I want you to remember this: God never called you to live small. But be ready, because when you start seeing disrespect for what it is, resistance will come. The enemy will whisper, you're overreacting, you're just being dramatic, you're making this a bigger deal than it is. He will try to shame you into silence. That's his strategy, to keep you trapped in cycles of emotional poverty. But you're not called to carry that. It takes courage to confront hard truths. It takes faith to admit when someone or something no longer fits the purpose God has for your life. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to stand up and say, I see what this is, and I refuse to accept it any longer. Don't wait until your spirit is broken. Don't wait until your confidence is gone. God is speaking now. He's saying, lift your head, open your eyes, I have better for you. But first, you must release what no longer deserves your time, your trust, or your heart. Disrespect isn't always loud, but if you listen closely, you'll hear it in the silence, you'll feel it in your spirit. And when you do, don't ignore it, because what you tolerate will soon become what you teach people to repeat. Some people will try to drag you back into storms that God has already delivered you from. They'll bait you with drama, they'll provoke you with sharp words, they'll push every button they can just to get a reaction. But hear me, don't trade your peace for their chaos, because the moment you do, you hand them control. And God didn't bring you this far just to watch you lose yourself in someone else's confusion. The peace of God is not something you need to fight for, it's something you need to protect. He gives it freely, but He won't force you to keep it. That's your decision, that's your discipline, that's your boundary. When someone disrespects you, belittles you, or tries to shake your spirit, it's not just your feelings they're after, they're trying to disrupt your atmosphere. And you've got to learn to say, "Not today, not in my spirit, not in my space." You see, when you finally draw the line, don't be surprised when the ones who benefited from your lack of boundaries start to push back. They'll resist, they'll question you, they'll throw words at you like, "You've changed," or "You're being distant now," or even, "Why are you being so difficult?" But I need you to remember, those reactions are not your guilt to carry, that's not your burden to hold. What you're hearing is simply the sound of their lost control echoing through their frustration. People who truly love you will adjust. They may not like your boundaries, but they'll respect them, they'll honor them. But the ones who used your kindness as a license to cross every line, they're the ones who will act like your boundaries are a declaration of war. But don't fold, don't shrink, don't waste your breath explaining yourself to people who are fully committed to misunderstanding you. There's something sacred about saying no, there's something powerful about walking away from chaos and choosing calm. There's an unshakable strength that rises inside you when you stop chasing peace and start enforcing it. Now hear me clearly. I don't mean becoming rude, I don't mean cutting people off in bitterness, I mean standing firm and saying, "I will no longer participate in conversations that dishonor my spirit. I will no longer entertain behaviors that exhaust me. I will no longer apologize for protecting the life, the heart, and the peace that God gave me." You don't need to justify your boundaries, you don't need to rehearse your reasons or deliver perfect explanations. If someone keeps demanding to know why you don't want to be yelled at, manipulated, ignored, or disrespected, they're not seeking understanding, they're seeking permission to keep doing it. And your silence has been permission long enough. Look at Jesus. He didn't chase people who walked away from him, he didn't run after the Pharisees, pleading with them to understand his heart. He didn't try to force love where it wasn't welcome, he spoke the truth. He stood tall, and when necessary, he removed himself from environments that didn't honor the presence of God within him. That's not weakness. That's wisdom, that's spiritual maturity, that's knowing your worth in the eyes of your Creator. If you constantly feel drained, undervalued, or unseen in a relationship, that's not something you need to pray harder to endure, that's something you might need to step back from in wisdom. Because no matter how strong your faith is, if you keep standing in a place where your soul is repeatedly disrespected, even your strength will eventually run dry. God is not glorified by your exhaustion, He's not impressed by how long you can stay in toxic spaces, He is not calling you to sacrifice your mental health or your peace just to prove you're loyal. God calls us to peace, God calls us to wisdom, God calls us to discernment, and sometimes that means saying, "This far, and no further." Yes, it might feel lonely at first. Yes, it might feel uncomfortable, because when you stop shrinking yourself to fit places that don't deserve you, you'll feel that empty space. But don't mistake that absence for loss. Sometimes peace feels like loneliness at first, but it's actually the doorway to freedom. The kind of freedom that makes space for divine restoration, the kind of freedom that clears the path for the right people to enter your life. People who don't just tolerate your boundaries but honor them. I know some of you are afraid to draw the line because you're worried you'll lose people, but let me speak to your heart. Anyone you lose by respecting yourself was never meant to stay. You don't lose by setting boundaries, you lose by allowing people to trample the sacred ground of your soul. You lose by abandoning your values just to keep someone else comfortable in their disrespect. So start today, speak softly but firmly. You don't have to beg for space. You can claim it. You don't need permission to matter. Walk like you do. When people test you, not because they're curious, but because they think you'll fold, let them see that you won't let your silence be steady. Let your no be holy. Let your boundaries reflect your belief that God's peace is worth protecting at any cost. When someone disrespects you, your first instinct might be to try harder, to prove yourself, to win their favor. But listen to me carefully. You were never created to chase after people who refuse to see your worth. That's not love, that's not strength, that's bondage. God didn't place you on this earth to be shackled by the opinions of broken people. There are people who will look right at you, see the goodness in your heart, and still choose to dishonor you, not because you've done anything wrong, but because their own hearts are clouded by pride, insecurity, or spiritual blindness. And the more you chase their approval, the smaller you'll become. The more you chase it, the more you'll doubt yourself. The more you chase it, the more you'll forget who you really are. You are not here to convince anyone of your worth. You are here to walk in it. You are not here to beg for kindness, for honesty, For respect, you are here to set the standard, to reflect the love of God, and to walk away from anything that refuses to honor that. That doesn't mean you walk around full of pride, it doesn't mean you treat people with coldness or contempt. But it does mean that when someone repeatedly shows you they will not honor the gift God placed in you, you stop giving them front row seats to your life, you stop giving your best to people who only respond with their worst, you stop watering relationships that only grow thorns. You don't have to hate them, you don't have to speak poorly of them, you just have to shift your focus. Let your life speak, let your fruit be your answer. Because one of the most powerful ways to deal with people who don't respect you is to rise in quiet strength, not with pride, but with purpose, not with noise, but with focus. Do you know how powerful it is to keep building even after they rejected you, to keep shining even after they tried to dim your light? That's what confuses the ones who tried to break you. They thought their dismissal would define you, they thought their rejection would reduce you. But they didn't know, your value doesn't come from people, it comes from the one who formed you in the secret place. And when you truly understand that, you stop reacting to every insult, you stop explaining every decision, you stop showing up in places where you are merely tolerated, just to feel included. Because you know now, if I have to shrink to fit in, it's not the right room. If I have to lose my peace to get your attention, it's not worth the price. Sometimes God allows the disrespect not to crush you, but to clarify you, to wake you up, to show you what's real. Because you were settling, you were entertaining people who didn't deserve that level of access to your heart. And God, in His mercy, stepped in, not to hurt you, but to free you. There's no need to retaliate, you don't have to prove yourself to people who have already chosen not to see you. That's wasted energy, that's stolen time. Give that energy back to your healing, give that time back to your calling, pour it into the people who truly see you, pour it back into the God who loved you before you ever took your first breath. And I want to speak directly to the part of you that feels alone, the part that still wonders. Why did they treat me like that? What did I do wrong? Listen closely. Some people can only treat you at the level they treat themselves. If they're harsh with you, they're likely even harsher with themselves. If they withhold love from you, it's probably because they never learned how to receive it. But that's not your fault, and it's not your job to fix that in them. You can love someone and still walk away from a place where you're not honored. You can forgive someone and still protect your peace. You don't need to carry the weight of someone else's dysfunction. You've done enough, you've stayed long enough, you've explained yourself enough. Now it's time to rise, not in bitterness, but in boldness. It's time to become who God called you to be, before the disrespect, before the wounds, before the questions. And that version of you, that version doesn't need permission to shine. That version doesn't need applause to feel valuable. That version walks in quiet confidence, rooted in truth, unmoved by rejection, unshaken by opinions. You don't have to lower your standards to keep people from leaving. Sometimes, the leaving is the blessing. You see, the journey we've been walking through so far has been about realizing this. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You don't have to fight to be seen. You don't have to scramble for recognition. Why? Because you are already known. You are already valued. You are already deeply cherished by the God who created you. That kind of surrender, that kind of quiet confidence, is not weakness. It's spiritual maturity. It's saying, God, I trust you more than I trust the outcome I think I want. But trust me, you will be tested. People will provoke you, they will misunderstand you, they will misrepresent you, they will twist your silence and call it weakness. But don't let that shake you, don't let their voices rearrange your spirit. Let them think what they want, because while they talk, God works. While they mock, God moves. When you surrender the battle to Him, He doesn't just settle the conflict, He elevates you through it. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in life don't come after the biggest fight. They come after the quietest surrender. Not surrender to the disrespect, not surrender to defeat, but surrender to the will of God. It's when you say, Lord, I will no longer waste one more ounce of my energy trying to convince someone of my worth. I will put all my energy into becoming who you've called me to be. And sometimes that means doing something your pride doesn't want to do. Praying for the very people who wronged you, not because they deserve your prayer, but because you refuse to let bitterness take root in your heart. You pray, not to change them, but to protect your own peace. You pray, not because you're weak, but because you're strong enough to let go, strong enough to love from a distance, strong enough to forgive, not with your emotions, but with your will. And you trust that God will handle what your hands no longer need to touch. Let me tell you, There are blessings tied to surrender. There are doors that will only open when you stop trying to force them and start trusting God to unlock them in His perfect timing. There are battles God is waiting to fight on your behalf. If only you would step out of the way and let Him. Sometimes, God won't step in until you step back. And maybe you're thinking, but it hurts. Yes, it does. Being disrespected, overlooked, and mistreated, it cuts deep. It wounds the heart. But here's the question. What will you do with that pain? Because that pain can either poison you or purify you, depending on who you hand it to. If you give that pain to God, He will use it to refine you. He will build resilience in your soul. He will teach you how to rise without rage, how to stand without striving, how to walk in peace while everything around you screams, fight back. The world will tell you, don't let them win. Prove your point. Make them feel what you felt. But heaven says, be still. Let me fight for you. That's not passivity, that's power under control. That's what it means to walk by faith, to say, I will not be moved by their opinions. I will not be shaken by their actions. I will not trade my peace for an apology I may never receive. And when you live like that, you step into a freedom the world can't give you. Freedom from the need to be right, freedom from the urge to be loud, freedom from the pressure to be validated. You begin to walk with a quiet boldness that says, I don't need to fight for what's already mine. I belong to God. My future is secure. My worth is settled. So the next time someone disrespects you, pause. Breathe, and instead of reacting, surrender. Not surrender to them, but surrender to Him. Watch what happens when you stop trying to control the outcome and start trusting the one who holds it all. But let's be honest. The hardest part isn't walking away, it's keeping your heart clean, not your image. Not your reputation, your heart. Because it's so easy to let the actions of others pollute the condition of your soul. It's easy to let their cruelty make you bitter. It's easy to let their silence make you insecure. It's easy to let their betrayal make you hard. But listen to me. Guard your heart, protect it fiercely, because that's where your life flows from. Not from what they said, not from how they treated you, but from the condition of your heart before God. You see, disrespect doesn't just try to diminish you, it tries to corrupt you. It comes to plant seeds, seeds of anger, seeds of revenge, seeds of despair. If you're not careful, you'll start speaking from your wounds instead of your wisdom. You'll start living in reaction to pain instead of in response to truth. That's not what God wants for you. There's something sacred about keeping your heart soft in a world that wants to make you hard. It takes real strength, it takes real faith, it takes daily discipline not to let someone else's dysfunction become your identity. Because if you're not intentional, you'll start mirroring the very behaviors that hurt you. You'll gossip like they did, you'll ignore like they did, you'll belittle like they did. And suddenly, you've lost more than their respect. You've lost your peace, you've lost your joy, you've lost your character. Don't let that happen. Don't let someone else's brokenness become your blueprint. Just because they didn't know how to love you doesn't mean you stop loving. Just because they didn't see your worth doesn't mean you forget it. Your calling does not change just because they mishandled you. Your identity is not up for negotiation. You are still who God says you are, no matter how they treated you. Yes, they talked behind your back. Yes, they took you for granted. Yes, they played with your trust. But now, you have a choice. Will you become like them, or will you rise above it? Will you let your heart grow cold, or will you let God keep it clean? That's where the real battle is, not in the words exchanged, not in the silence endured, but in the heart that chooses to remain pure, even after being pierced. And I want to tell someone listening right now, just because you're hurt doesn't mean you have to hate. Just because you've been wronged doesn't mean you have to seek revenge. That's the trap. The enemy wants to pull you into that cycle of offense, bitterness, and retaliation. But God is offering you a higher road. It's not easy, it's not popular, but it leads to freedom, it leads to peace, it leads to healing. When you choose to keep your heart clean, you disarm the enemy, you silence the lies you say. You may have touched my circumstances, but you will not poison my soul. You may have caused me pain, but you will not corrupt my spirit. That's power, that's victory, not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that makes heaven stand and applaud. You don't need to make them feel what you felt. You don't need to plot your response. You don't need to rehearse the pain. Let God handle what you cannot. He sees it all. Every word whispered in secret. Every action taken in the dark, and He promises, vengeance is mine. I will repay. That's not a threat. That's a promise from a righteous judge. You can rest in that. You can lay your burdens down. You can walk away knowing He will make it right. So choose peace. Even when you're justified in your anger, choose compassion. Even when your flesh craves revenge, choose healing. Even when it's easier to stay bitter. Understand this. Keeping your heart clean doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means surrendering the pain. It means placing it in the hands of the one who can turn ashes into beauty and wounds into wisdom. When you do that, something shifts. You no longer need to prove your worth. You no longer need their apology to move forward. You no longer let the past speak louder than your purpose. That's what happens when the heart stays clean. It becomes a vessel for God's strength, God's love, and God's peace. So the next time someone disrespects you, don't just guard your reputation, guard your heart. Don't just walk away in silence, walk away. And surrender, don't just let them go, let God in. Because the condition of your heart will determine the direction of your life, and when your heart is right, no weapon formed against you can prosper, not because the weapon doesn't exist, but because it cannot touch a soul that is anchored in truth and covered by grace. Let them say what they will, let them do what they do, but as for you, keep your heart clean.